ways because we're going from introductory sort of prolegomena sorts of things into actual objections. And it's not a really interesting reason why I'm doing objections here before we build a positive case, but we could build a case for Christianity and then canvas various objections that but I start here just sort of digging into a few of the, I don't know, we're certainly not going to canvas them all. I mean, scratch, but these are very common sort of objections, ones that I think are worth thinking about. Again, I mean that in a very real sense. That I think this is helpful for us. We don't like objections. However, I think they're very helpful for us to think through and helps clarify what sort of view we should have and help clarify how we should think of various things. And so I think this is a very, very good exercise to go through. So this week we're going to talk about the challenge of what's often called religious pluralism. This idea that there are many ways to God, which is practically assumed these days in a lot of different contexts, as well as postmodernism, which is a word, one of those words that get sort of thrown around, and a lot of people don't know what it means, and that's for good reason, by the way, given what the view is. So, but we'll get there. Very difficult to define postmodernism because in some ways the view is. So here we go. You'll often hear this sort of story told. First, we're looking at religious stories. Here's the story. There were a group of blind men who came upon an elephant for the first time. They are all blind. They each attempt to understand what is before them by feeling the elephant. Of course, they feel different parts of the elephant and get different truths. The first feels the side of the elephant, takes it to be a wall. The second happens on the trunk of the elephant, takes it to be a long like a snake. The third touches the tusk and thinks an elephant is like a spear. The fourth feels the leg of the elephant and takes elephants to be like tree trunks. The fifth feels the ear and thinks elephants are like fans. And the sixth thinks an elephant is like a throat, given that he's the tail. Right? So they kind of all are getting at. The idea is to say none of them are wrong. But they're just getting different pieces of a bigger picture. Right, none of them are wrong, but for any of them to, the idea, of course, is for any of them to say against the other views that the others are wrong. That's the mistake. Right? So in a way, it's trying to paint a picture in which they're all right. We're all describing. Okay. Now, most religious believers in the history of the world, have thought their views are true. That should be mind-blowing. I just say people have been adherents of the religious view. That is to say that they think that view is true, and then everybody else is false where those views disagree. Right? So when you kind of butt up against another view, and one view claims A, and the other view claims not A, well, they can't both be right. That's that. Used to be that we all sort of disagree, but today it's a bit more muddled than that. And I say here that being muddled has a name, which is pluralism. It's a muddled sort of view. Philosophically, it's a hard view to defend, depending on what the thesis is. But the sort of typical run-of-the-mill sophomore university campus religious pluralist has got deep philosophical problems with it. We're just going to refer to this as RP, and the view is that roughly all religious beliefs are true, at least of the major religions. Right? If you just sort of like said, okay, great, my religious view is, you just made it up on the spot, they might not have a place for that. But if there's a kind of deep tradition to your religion or your religious tradition, then religious pluralism on this, sort of rough characterization of it says that it's true. Or at least this is going to cover, I won't say better, but they're kind of better. They're more sophisticated. The more sophisticated versions will say that they at least provide ways to God or whatever we want to, falls under that category of the sort of otherworldly, or what John Pick, who's a very famous religious pluralist, he would call it he would always put a capital R on. I do want to say, because, it might not be God, it might not be a person, it might not be a being of God like we envision, but whatever it is, religious traditions all sort of provide ways. All right, what are we defending? Well, typically in the literature, everybody here at Southwestern, for the most part, I would think, would fall under the category of Christian exclusivists. That is to say that, in fact, Christianity is the exclusively right way. Christianity describes truth, and all other contrary views are false. And there's at least a few theses that go under being Christian exclusivist. This is somewhat similar to Plantinga. I think in the piece of literature today, I quoted Plantinga, but I've sort of adapted it a little bit. I think it actually. Here's what I've got. God, as described in the Bible, exists, right? But that being exists. But not just God, fill in the blank, but God as described in the Bible. There's going to be differences of opinion of what exactly that God is like. You've got, people here at Southwestern disagree about whether or not God's in time or outside of time in some sense. Right? Some people think of God's not necessarily here at Southwestern, but some would believe in the God of the Bible, but would think that God doesn't know future contingent facts. The so-called open deals. Right? There's just this differences of opinion, but however the Bible describes it, that being exists. That's part of being a Christian exclusivist. Plenty of open theists that think that Jesus is the uniquely right way. Secondly, though, this really brings the uniqueness or the unique claims into it, is that human beings require salvation. God has provided the unique way of salvation. A unique way. I want to say the unique way of salvation through Jesus Christ. Now, that's not quite probably everybody's view in the room. Not quite my view. Right? We want to say even something a little bit further than that. Precisely because there's a view that says, I'm a Christian exclusivist, but people in, say, remote India who overall live moral lives, and let's say we maybe part of the view is to say they have an awareness of God and they live a moral life on the basis of that awareness. There's a certain view that says that person too will be saved, but they affirm too. How do they do that? Well, they say they're saved on the basis of what Jesus did. Jesus accomplished salvation, even if that person never heard the name Jesus Christ before, knows anything about that. That wouldn't be most people's view at Southwestern. In my view, we would add, and this is sometimes goes under the name of Christian particularism, that it is through explicit faith in Jesus Christ that human beings receive him. That is to say, the person in remote India that's never heard is not saved. How would their life fall? Any questions about everybody? That's the view that typically. I don't think there's even all controversial. This is the view of most evangelicals, certainly Baptists, I would say. You never know about that. Yes. Most evangelical. Okay. Let's first of all defend Christian exclusivism. I won't have as much to say about Christian particularism, but just I want you to be aware that that's certainly my view. That when it comes to this sort of discussion, Christian exclusivism is enough to show religious pluralism is false. Does that make sense? So if we defend Christian exclusivism, then if that's right, if that's successful, then religious pluralism is false. We don't actually need particularism tacked on in order to do it false. Because essentially, for most religious pluralists, 1 and 2 are, 1 is even a problem for religious pluralists, and 2 certainly. All right, so defending Christian exclusivism, 2 reasons, I think, at least 2. Here's 2. I mentioned there's certainly more. Jesus himself and his apostles, in no uncertain terms, claim that Jesus is the only way. It's pretty straightforward out of the lips of Jesus in John 14:6. Right, he claims to be the only way to the Father. Acts 4:12 is a claim of the apostles, claiming that. But I also think the very nature of the gospel itself, right? If the gospel is that Jesus, the Son of God, came and died on the cross for our sins, right? If that's part of the gospel, which of course we don't know what it is, then it's very hard to see why the Muslim has it right too. It's hard to see how, if you affirm that piece about the gospel, but also it's by following the sort of dictates of the Quran and confessing Muhammad as the prophet and so on. It's hard to see how that could achieve salvation when, on the Christian view, it's literally God sent his Son to die on the cross. Right? It seems like he did that. Then why would also following the Buddha in what he teaches, or enlightenment, or whatever, in some way get us to salvation? I think if you're going to be a Christian and hold to the gospel, then that really, in virtue of that, rules out these other sorts of views. It in virtue of it, if it's true, rules out these other alternatives. In other words, you can't kind of put these together and say, well, this or this or this or this, and you get because the gospel itself is already exclusive. Okay, yeah, we can, of course, talk a lot more about that. Those would be the reasons that I would give if I were defending this. All right, well, let's get into the alternative view then, the religious pluralist view. Again, there's a lot of ways to be a religious pluralist. First one we're going to talk about is the sophomore university campus. We call them the simple religious pluralist that says all or most religious views are literally correct. I mean, in effect, one is saying, look, everybody's right about everything. And it feels good. It kind of feels good. It's kind of tempting sort of view because you don't have to be impolite at, get-togethers and things. And you being the one that's saying, no, you're wrong about that. You can just be the life of the party and sort of say everybody's right. Well, there's deep philosophical problems. So let me get into that. Problem one is it's just simply and straightforwardly, it's the example that logic professors use as being logically incoherent. It's impossible that they are all true. Because Christianity claims that God is a Trinity. Islam claims that God is one in all senses, right? There's no diversity, no sort of carving, conceptually speaking, God up at all. Pure, in a way, pure unity. And if you like, well, atheism would say there's no God, but even Buddhism is probably atheistic, because there really is no God. Actually, Mormonism is kind of atheism too. People doesn't claim there to be a God, which is all men. But in any case, so with atheism, that's fine. Notice those 3 claims can't all be true. They can't all be true. How could it be? How could it be that you have a God who's Trinitarian, a God who is unitary, and no God? How could all 3 of those be the case? How could any 2 of those be the case? They are logically exclusive claims in the sense that if God is a Trinity, then it entails he's not a unitary being. There is no God. Well, it entails that there's no Trinitarian God. Couldn't believe both at the same time, given the laws of logic. Now, each of these particular ones could be false. And polytheism could be the case, or Mormonism could be the case. that talking Mormon is not fresh. They could all be false, but they cannot be all true. It's logically inherent. You couldn't consistently claim that. You literally are faced with religious pluralism or the laws of logic. And whenever it's your view or the laws of logic, guess what? Your view. Okay. From two, and this is of course basically the same problem, but it's self-refuting, which is sort of like the worst sort of diagnosis of a claim is that it's self-refuting. I think we've talked about this a little bit. Here's a definition for you of what it is to be self-refuting. When what they claim asserts actually falsifies the claim. That is it really kind of gets into it. So saying in English, I speak no English, is self-refuting. Right. If you just spoke English, say that you don't speak any English. Now, again, when most people say I speak no English, they mean they only speak a little tiny bit kind of thing. But strictly speaking, if they said, look, I don't speak any word whatsoever, not even one word in English, well, you just did, right? You did it. Right? This is self-refuting. All sentences longer than 7 words are false. 8 words, right? How could that literally couldn't be true? Neither, but that second one, when you stare at it for a second, that literally could not be true. There's no possible world in which that's true. It's incoherent, right? It's not even false, it's just incoherent. It doesn't even make sense. Self-refuting. Or to say there is no absolute truth. Why is that self-refuting? No. Because it is put forward as an absolute truth. Now, as stated, maybe there's some wiggle room, but if somebody were to say something like, look, it is absolutely true that there is no absolute truth, well, that's self-refuting. Right? Because that said that was an absolute truth. But there are no absolute truths, so it just collapses. And so with this sort of religious pluralist view that says all views are equally valid. Why is that self-refuting? Because the view that says views are not all equally valid would be equally valid by its own criteria. That's Let me give you some examples. If all views are equally valid, then all of these views are equally valid. Claim religious pluralism is false, right? It's equally valid. Claim religious pluralism is crazy and only nutty people believe religious pluralism becomes, by its own criteria, valid. Or, hey, how about this one? If you believe religious pluralism is true, then you should give me $100. Right? That becomes equally valid on their own views. Or anyone who believes religious pluralism should be shot. I don't like to say that. But all of those views become, and really it's the first one that shows it to be self-refuting. They have to say, I mean, think about how crazy this is to say, logically speaking. The view that my view is false is equally valid on my view. It's kind of equally true. That's true on my view. And my view is false. Okay, so it's logically incoherent. It's self-refuting. Sometimes people will say this kind of thing, that it's arrogant to claim absolute truth, intolerant to do so. And there's really ways in which this term tolerance has taken on sort of a new life and it has been redefined in various ways. Think about the word itself. It typically sort of implies already that there's disagreement. That one side, that both sides think the other side's false. Because if they didn't, there's no reason to tolerate it. Right? There would just be an agreement with each other. But when you have tolerance, when there's a need for tolerance, this already assumes that, both parties sort of disagree about what they're doing. Okay. But what I want to say is arrogance is not, there's no such thing as an arrogant view. People are arrogant. You can hold any view in a sort of arrogant sort of way, but you can also hold any view in a sort of humble way. right? And sort of open-minded. You're not going to ridicule. You're not going to, you know, have physical violence against, right? You can hold any view with a sort of humility, or you can hold any view with arrogance. But it can't be that the view itself is arrogant. And again, if pluralism comes out just as exclusive as any sort of religious fundamentalist, then then the claim would sort of come back on them too. They would be just as arrogant. Right? They often are a bit snooty. Let me show you an example. So imagine this. This would be, this is not straight word for word from somebody that I came across. And frankly, it's only because I lost that. I used to have a paragraph just like this I used for classes, and I don't know where it's gone. So I recreated it. But so this is something that people have said. And again, I think at least we can imagine people saying this. All right, so imagine this. So today, the primary societal value is tolerance and acceptance. It is completely unacceptable to claim that one has the exclusive corner on the market of truth. Any such person is simply wrong and deserves the scorn he or she will inevitably receive. This person needs not have a voice or any representation in our pluralist society. We only have room for those who celebrate tolerance and acceptance. What are the problems?
It's self-refuting.
How so?
Because it's saying our view is the only right view and everyone else is wrong.
Yeah.
But they're criticizing intolerance when they themselves are being intolerant of all their views.
Right, you see all the intolerance, I mean, in various ways. That's right. Yeah. So we're called unacceptable. We're called simply wrong. We're told that we're going to deserve scorn. I mean, or the person who claims that's what you're going to receive scorn, not have a voice, not have any representation. We only have room for tolerance. For those who are tolerant. What are they saying? Well, they're saying we only have room for those that will agree with us, which is the height of intolerance by their own definition. But these you could find these sorts of claims all over the place on the internet, especially. But people say these sorts of things all the time. They'll say, "We're not going to allow so and so to speak on our college campus because he's so intolerant." he stifles voices. Right? We're not going to let him speak.
Makes our safe zone.
Yeah. So my own view on this, again, I think tolerance is a good thing, but I think it assumes disagreement. And I want to say it's silly to say that we all just have equally valid, views, because we don't all have equally valid views, and nobody thinks that. Nobody thinks their views are, well, I shouldn't say nobody, but generally speaking, we think our view is superior over, say, the views of the Taliban, or those that would fly airplanes in the building, those that would engage in genital mutilation, those that would, do X, Y, and Z terrible things. Right? We don't want to say that. I mean, who wants to say that? Right? That the views of Hitler equally valid.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know what I'm saying? But a lot of times people are just sort of a bit schizophrenic about this. They'll say they'll have this sharp criticism for anybody who aligns themselves, Trump or somebody, and then the next second talk about pluralism and tolerance and hearing everybody's voice and this sort of thing. I don't mean just to pick on Trump enemies or whatever, but you do hear that kind of thing, but you definitely hear it from conservatives too. But I think tolerance is a very good thing. But let's just be honest about our views and not feel the need to sort of pat everybody on the back and say, hey, everybody's views. No, some people will have some really valid views, and we should engage in dialogue and debate and point out that their views are wrong. Right? 2 Corinthians, is it 10:5, where Paul talks about demolishing arguments, demolishing ideas that are set up against the knowledge of God. Right? I think that's the perfectly appropriate approach, notice he doesn't say destroy the person, right? So we do need to be careful that we destroy the idea and not the person who holds the idea, of course. But this idea that we would debate and dialogue, that's fully within. All right, there's a more sophisticated version of religious pluralism, and that's John Hick, who he actually got saved. I want to say through Campus Crusade, but I could be wrong about that. Kind of in his college years, would claim he got saved, became an evangelical, with the street thing, et cetera, et cetera. But really, as he became aware of so many different religious views, and as he got further in his studies and so forth, he came to adopt a pretty thoroughgoing religious pluralism, where he would say this much more sophisticated view than the sort of sophomoric one that we mentioned a second ago. His view would be this. Now, this might not sound a lot more sophisticated, but it's definitely more defensible, I think, at the end of the day. It fails. But his view would be, all religions are, strictly speaking, false. Thanks very much. But everything you believe about Christianity is, strictly speaking, false, in the way in which, if you believe Homer's Odyssey and Iliad, literally, if you took all that literally, you'd be believing things, a lot of things that are false. If you think that Zeus is out there somewhere, you're believing something false. But he would say, in virtue of believing these things or following these things, following the teaching of whatever religious figure you're following, it provides a way to the real that he again capitalizes. Right. So the first claim might be a little offensive. Yes, yeah, he's done we're all wrong. This does become a sort of problem, but he's meaning strictly speaking. What religious traditions do is provide for us kind of myth, right? And myth in the technical sense of it, which means that it's a story by which we live our lives. It's kind of like the specific fables that we might read that would have a moral teaching to them, right? But they might use some sort of fancy magic or fairies or whatever to teach that moral. He thinks that's what like Christianity, Islam, Hinduism, Buddhism, all these are, is they are using false, strictly speaking, false stories to teach the way to God. He wouldn't say God. And in part because he thinks the real, this sort of world beyond our world, is a world we can't describe. So the real is just an imperfect way to make reference to it. We don't know if it's a being. We don't know what it's like. We don't know how to. I can't say we don't know how to get there, but I think you would say the religions of the world, especially the way in which they sort of overlap, have similarities and commonalities. They are teaching us how to get there. So there's many different ones. This is really, he's actually very, very interesting, and if somebody's so inclined, this is a great paper topic to address the objection of religious pluralism. You want to definitely dig into it. There's others too, but he's definitely one on the side of religious pluralism. And again, just to emphasize with the papers, you want to look at the most academic and sort of scholarly presentation for the other side. It's really important that you look at the other side of whatever issue. Right? Somebody that's actually defending this objection, you want to look at the most sophisticated version. All right, lots of problems here, I think. I want to ask this question. It's kind of a minute ago, but how does the religious pluralist of this sort know we're getting to the real? I mean, how could he know that? Can we be wrong about that? That's kind of the worry. Is, well, what if Christianity, Islam, Hinduism, they're getting us to the real, but Buddhism is not. How could they ever know that it is or it isn't? I mean, they have no criteria to judge, right? Because you can't describe that world. You can't describe what that's like. So therefore, it seems you can't describe how to get there either. Maybe some people are right, some people are wrong with religious pluralism, without any criteria to be able to judge. The point here, to bring back the blind man and the elephant, probably makes this point too, in the reason for God. But notice there's one person who's not blind in this story. Who's that? Well, the elephant. The narrator, the one telling the story, the one saying, look, hey, all you blind people. Who are the blind people? It's all us religious folks. We're blind about reality. Religious pluralist is letting us know how reality really is. And that is, we're all sort of describing different pieces of the broader puzzle. The problem with that is how in the world that they have a view of reality as it really is, that tells us, hey, don't worry, everybody's describing the same thing. How could they possibly have that sort of perspective on reality, given what they say about it, given what they say about the really real? Right? They think that's completely indescribable. We can't know any specific things about it. We can't say any specific things about it. And yet they seem to be, right? I mean, John Hick writes books describing how all these religious views are getting to the real. He couldn't possibly know that, it seems to me, unless he would have to give up on that name. Yep.
The real has no attributes, no characteristics of its own that you can really nail down.
He would say none that we can know or describe. It's completely sort of removed from any kind of empirical study. We don't experience it as it is. We experience it as it seems to us, and it will seem to us in the Christian sort of way, for the Christians, and it will seem to the Muslim in the Islam sort of way, so on. So we only have sort of our perspective or our experience of it, rather than the way it is. It's sort of, think of it this way, it's sort of filtered through for it, just by necessity of our humanity, it's sort of filtered through whatever worldview we possess. If that's Christian worldview, okay, it's going to present to us as Christian.
What about the commonalities, like simplistic commonalities in our religion? Are those or any that are closer to the real, or is that further away?
What do you mean by those?
I like, say, and this is just for argument's sake, some people say that Islam, Judaism, Christianity, all believe in the same God. So they have that.
Right.
What he say? That's getting us closer to the real.
No, I think he would not, because he would say billions and billions of people disagree. But though, yeah, you do have billions that agree in a sense. You think that Christian view of God, Jewish view of God, and the Muslim view of God are all described, make reference to the same God. That's also not my view that but if you think that, yeah, you got billions, but you got this balance by billions and billions of others who don't. So it's sort of like those commonalities pale in the face of the folks that would disagree in wild. I don't mean wild, but like wildly different, radically different. Okay, but it seems again there's a kind of self-refutation here. Because it violates its own criterion by saying, in virtue of being an adherent of these religions, we're getting to the real. But that's the thing that we're supposed to not be able to. All right. What I want to say, this is going to get us a little bit into what we're going to talk about in a minute, when we talk about postmodernism, but that inclusivity, as good as that sounds, right, being inclusive versus exclusive is impossible. It's actually impossible, right? Because if we were to say something like this, everybody, no matter what they believe, right. If anything's inclusive, that's inclusive. But notice, who does this claim exclude?
People that believe that other people are wrong.
Yeah, anybody who believes that others are sometimes wrong about something. Notice, this probably doesn't include anybody on the planet. Okay? It excludes probably everybody. I mean, maybe somebody thinks that's right, but I doubt it. Like, almost everybody thinks somebody's wrong. And, you know, just look aside from the fact that it's self-imputing, because that would be to say that anybody that thinks this claim itself is wrong is right. Try to get them under on that. But moreover, the point here is to say that if anything's inclusive, this is it. But it actually excludes everybody on the planet because nobody holds it. See what I mean? It tells everybody that doesn't believe that's true that they're wrong. And so it looks like it's as exclusive as any other claim. And that's just because anytime we claim something is true, right, follow me here, we're excluding others. Anytime we make a truth claim, we're excluding others. We're excluding those that don't hold to that truth claim or believe something different from that truth claim. So I say here, whenever we make a claim, in virtue of that claim, we're saying it's true. And if we're saying it's true, then anybody that disagrees is we're saying by implication that they are wrong. They are false. So I think exclusivity is literally unavoidable. The religious pluralist makes claims. They say all religions lead to God, let's say. Notice that excludes you and me, because I don't believe that. You don't believe that, I'm guessing. It excludes many Muslims, many Mormons, most people in the history of the world. It's really only this very small group of people we call religious pluralists that believe that. All other views are excluded. So I think exclusivity is just unavoidable. So we should just sort of embrace it and say, no, this is what I'm saying. So that implies I think you're wrong. We're going to be tolerant. That's a good thing. I'm not going to beat you for it or, run you out of here or anything like that. Let's hear your view wherein you think I'm wrong. And let's do this. Let's talk about it. Let's present reasons for or against and just have a dialogue. And we see where we come out. Right? That is contrary to our contemporary sort of virtue signaling and things where people say no, disagreement, no good, not it, that sort of thing. But I think that's wonderful. I think that's just the way it should be. We should have people in our lives with whom we disagree, both people within our, sort of Baptist circles where we disagree on some things. Right? That happens in Baptist circles. Okay, good. Every once in a while. We should have people that are from different Christian traditions with whom we disagree, that we get dialogue with. I think we should have atheists and other people from other traditions for whom we disagree, and we can dialogue. I think that's a wonderful thing. So the question might be, how do we know Christianity is correct? Well, I think, again, we're stuck with the reasons and evidence. And I do want to suggest this, because I do think that sometimes in this disagreement literature, people want to just make the mere fact that people disagree the big deal. But I think it's at least possible, isn't it? Christians have something that no other religious views have, and that is a real experience with God. They really, truly have an experience with God that others don't, even though they may think that they do. Right, so just the mere fact that we disagree with people, there's nothing too interesting follows from that, seems to me. Maybe I need to look at the reasons and evidence and the the specifics of what each are claiming to sort of view it. All right. Okay. Good. 15 minutes. Right. About 33 we'll start. 1:30 minutes. Postmodern.